All right. Hey, thanks everybody for joining us. This is our first image comp critique virtual class. Basically, what this is we're just going to talk about image competition. We've got some images that we're going to go over because it's the beginning of the year 2023. We've got some new rules that we want to outline and talk about because AI, is taking over the world. So we figured, well, we better talk about that too. And we've got Duane Murphy here, who is a past president of PPOC and a member of IEPPV, who's going to be my co-critiquer. And we got some friends from kind of all over the world, right? We've got, a lot of Southern California and somebody from Australia, Craig Stampley there. So I welcome everybody. So just the way that this is going to work, so for anybody that doesn't know, is we've got some images that we're going to talk about. Duane and I will talk about them in respect to image competition. We can talk about scores, what kind of score we might give them. Both of us have judged local and state before, but we're going to talk about how things that we might suggest that you fix, how to get your scores improved. If it's your image, and you don't want your name mentioned, we don't have to talk about that. If you want to tell us it's your image, and we can speak directly to you and kind of, help you choose maybe a category or a title, or that's what we're here for, is to try and encourage you and improve your image competition experience. So without any further conversation from me, I'm going to introduce Mr. Brad Toms, who is our image competition chair for IEPPV this year. And we have rewritten the rules. He's rewritten the rules, and he's going to speak to that a little bit about what's coming up, because we want everybody to be on the same even playing field, right? So
Yeah.
my good friend Brad, go ahead.
Thank you, Troy. I appreciate that. And welcome everybody to the first class that we've had online this year, correct? Is it the first one?
I think so. We've done more
Close. Yeah.
live than we've
Yeah.
done virtual.
Which is
So
nice. Yeah. Great.
yeah.
Okay. So just real quickly, I'll go over a couple of the basic changes in the 2023 image comp rules. Uh, First, we had to identify and what a photographic image is, and that's an image taken by either a digital image or a film camera and caught on a sensor. And the reason we went into all that is because of AI. You can basically create a photo from anything through AI. So we wanted to specify that. Then for those of you that are new to IEPPV, we have two categories where you can enter, or two groups in which you can enter your images. You have the general group and then the masters group. So we talked a little bit about what is required to enter each of those groups. If you are in the general category and you enter an image through IEPPV or PPOC or any local affiliate, and you're in the general group and you receive a score of 80 or above, or a merit, you can also enter that photo in the master's division at a later time. Not the same year, but say you wanted to re-enter it the following year in the master's division, you could do that. If you submit a photo to any other affiliate, so at the state level, and you receive a merit or something similar to an award or anything like that, you cannot enter those photos to IEPPV.
Right. And the goal for that is we want you to move your images up in scale. So never the other way around. So if you score or if you merit at an event that's higher than IEPPV, right? So we have the general at IEPPV, general division, we have our master's division, then we have state and national and, other international. We want the image to move up, not down.
And then we added a new paragraph to the image competition that specifies artificial intelligence. It's a lengthy paragraph. I suggest that you when you get in there, get in and read that paragraph. But you cannot utilize artificial intelligence to improve your photo. You can use sharpening and all the basic type tools that are somewhat AI, like in Photoshop, but you can't use AI to develop a sky or to develop, to enhance a photo or change any major part of the photo. So, and if in fact we think that there's something like that occurring, then the image comp chair can ask for you to submit the raw photo along with the photo that you submitted, so we can verify that AI was in fact not used. And we're just trying to make sure that our members are, we're getting out there and being creative and taking these photographs ourselves, and not utilizing some of these tools that are out there that make it rather simple, or easier, so to speak. You want to add to that, Troy?
Uh, that's very well said. I mean, adding AI becomes more of a creative, artistic illustration and not a photograph, right? Photographs are about capturing photons, so we're trying to keep the playing field even for everybody. If in the future, we've had this discussion at the board, if in the future we want to have sort of an open creative category, that's a creative image category, we could always do that. So if you have a strong feeling about that, you can always reach out to us. We're open for creative development in the future, but make sure you check out the rules.
And that's pretty much it. The only other change we're going to do this year with image comp is it will be live in person, but the judges will be online, so that will be nice. It'll be kind of a hybrid of what we used to do. It used to be 100% live, where we had the judges with us, and you could watch them discuss and comment on it. You'll still be able to see them comment, but they'll be online and we'll be live in a room watching it on a big screen.
Right. And to speak more to that, so if anybody's been to any of our meetings, it's at the Hampton East in Corona, right off the 91 freeway in Pierce, north off of Pierce. There's two Hamptons in Corona, so don't get confused. The goal is at the back of the room. You can show up early. You can get there about 5 o'clock. You can bring lunch. You can bring food. You can bring beverages if you want. Sit at the back of the room. We can eat, hang out, socialize. The front of the room will be set up classroom style, where you'll be able to see the screen, and Brad and Kim and whoever's running the judging competition will be there, so you can engage at that level too. So we want to be able to have the virtual judges, because we can choose judges from all over the world, but we also want the social aspect of it, where we can sit in the back and together we can point and make fun and try to guess what the scores are, have that social aspect of it. So that's where we're going with that. We're developing that. So yeah, the first one will be coming up real soon. Anything else on that, Brad?
That's it. That's all I got for you.
Okay. I'm going to call out Duane for a second. Duane, I muted you because I think you were shuffling around just a bit. But could you do a favor and speak to any of our members that are watching this that might not understand why they should enter a competition? What would be some of the reasons to enter a competition, as opposed to just getting an award?
There's a number of reasons to enter a print competition. And I'm going to start with the fact that as a professional photographer, trying to sell photographs is not one of them. Print competition is fantastic for learning what you don't know. As the saying goes, we don't know what we don't know. By having 3 judges making comments about a photograph, that will give you an idea of what to improve on. Number 2, image competition, when I started entering, was fantastic for giving myself the justification that I was in the right place and that the work that I was producing was creative and quality work. And lastly, the creativity aspect that you are going to gain by seeing not only your work, but everybody else's work that's entering in the same categories is going to broaden what you want to create and how you go about creating it. I do pet photography for a living, and seeing how other pet photographers are creating work, submitting that work, has broadened how I photograph and the scope of work that I create within the same genre. So it allows for you to be inspired on a continual basis.
Cool. Thanks, Duane. I appreciate that. And so let me just speak to this idea that if you're here, you guys are already interested in image competition at some point. So kudos for you guys for being here, because competition is scary. And I'm not going to lie, right? It can be hurtful. It can be one of those kind of things. You got to be a little thick skinned, but it can be healthy for you. So we've had a lot of conversation with the team behind the scenes of how can we encourage more members to enter, because we believe so strongly that entering in competition is as much about the education as it is about like self-validation, right? Like validating that your work is good. So that's why we have if you're not familiar with it, we have the general category, which is for those who are new to competition and haven't received like their PPA masters or aren't looking to compete at a higher level. So for those that don't know what a PPA masters is, the Professional Photographers of America, they have a credentialed program where you go through, usually takes a few years, you earn your merits in education competition and you become a PPA master. In years past, the masters have been able to compete with the new photographers, and we didn't think that was fair. And of course it's a little harder, right? Like I'm a PPA master in the wedding category, and if somebody is new and they want to enter their new wedding images, well, that doesn't seem fair, right? So that's why we've divided that. So we want to encourage you to enter the division, the general division, and as you get more proficient in your skills over time, in years forward, you can upgrade to the masters. But it's also nice to be able to watch somebody enter in the master division because they judge harder and they're much more critical. So the general category, the general division is going to be a little bit more about encouraging and helping you build your images. So that's really, I think, kind of covered everything about the image competition side of it. So
I'll try one quick comment. When you start competing in the Masters division, it's actually becoming a lot more fun now because, let's face it, the majority of us can no longer run that mile marathon in 4 minutes. So I like to think of a print competition as being a competition for those that are athletically challenged. And so we get to sit down and have great rivalries with, can I beat Troy in wedding? Can Troy beat me in pet? And so the live viewing rooms, the Club 79s, the in-person viewing that IEPPV is going to be hosting actually allows for a whole new level of fun that we couldn't have anymore because the judges are not in the room. And we do get to openly talk, banter about what we think of the comments, but keep it educational.
Yeah, exactly. And for those of you remote, like Craig, if you want to participate in the competition banter at the back of the room, we'll just set up another Zoom call with you so you can sit there and you can complain with us. So it'll be fun. So any questions about image competition or anything specific that you guys have on your mind before we jump into the images and just start playing with these things? No, well, silence.
The only thing, I only have one sort of question, and I'm probably not ready for it yet, but the PPA Masters, is that something that is applicable to me on this far-flung part of the world?
It is.
Or do I need to be a American, as it were?
No, Craig, you are totally eligible to go through the PPA Masters process. The main requirement is the 2 to 3 year period that it will likely take you to be a member and qualify for those PPA merits.
Okay.
You will likely have a bit more of a challenge when it comes to the educational side in how you gather the education merits, because most people that I know, and Troy, correct me if I'm wrong on this, normally end up teaching a workshop in person, but there's other alternatives such as writing articles or other forms of PPA service to handle that aspect of it.
No problem. Sorry, just curious, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, to enter at a PPA level, to use like a car analogy, right? Like PPA level is be like Formula One compared to, kart or F2 or something like that, right? I mean, it's so much harder. They do one competition a year. The judges that judge at PPA, they're not just good people or good photographers that the organizations find. Like they go through a very long process of being credentialed and critiqued. And so when it goes through PPA, if you can merit at PPA and you can earn your master's through that, like it's a gauntlet. Now, for those that have entered at state or local, and I'm kind of looking at Craig here, early on, you kind of get really frustrated with you know, the perspectives in the bubble, right? There's a definite bubble that we function in, and what judges like and don't like. It gets even narrower at PPA,
Sure.
which, depending on your perspective, can be really frustrating, because why would they knock me down because I have a little hair or my hand is turned the wrong way? But that narrower narrow criticism, or that narrow critique that they have, will also help you hone your skills, right? Will help you really, really, really aim for the center of the target. Like, what do they want? Which I always say is, like, for me, and like as a wedding photographer, I have to create images for my clients. I don't create images for me. And competition's about creating images that the judges will like within the confines of that competition. So it's kind of a good exercise. So
Sure.
yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
And I think that's a really good question. I think that's fair, because a lot of new photographers come into image competition and they get really frustrated because, you know, they're like, well, the judge doesn't understand that, you know, how hard I worked to get that image, or how far I had to hike, or no, they don't care, and they shouldn't care, and they won't care, because it's the image that they're judging, not, you know, not how hard it was for you. And that can be hard for new people. It was certainly a struggle for me in the beginning. You know, I entered an image competition, I got critiqued, I got mad, and I quit for 3 years.
So now with either the merit image review or the new image competition, it's not so much about the photograph as it is the final piece of art, and that's literally what they're looking for.
Yeah.
They want the best of the best when it comes down to photojournalism. They want the best of the best when you are entering master artist and working Photoshop. They want the best of the original capture if you are creating a standard portrait.
Yep.
That's fair.
Well said. So, all right. You guys don't hesitate to, you know, jump in, interrupt us, put your hand up, wave at the camera, whatever. If you have questions, this is meant to be very interactive. This was set up for you guys, so that you could ask questions. You know, we already know a lot of this stuff, but you may not know this, so we want to make sure that we're encouraging you to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the first image. And okay, let me do some rearranging here. So Duane, you can see that okay, right? Duane's muted. Yep. You have to unmute, Duane.
I'm trying to work a balance as the cleaning people have decided they're going to vacuum for 45 minutes right outside my door.
Okay. Also, if this is your image and you want to announce that, go ahead and let us know. That way, if you want to ask questions, but if not, you're fine to do that. So, Duane, I'll let you go ahead and start, because I've done some edits to these images, and we'll get to that after you've talked about it. So,
so am I looking at the pre or the post edit?
Oh, pre. This is definitely pre.
Okay. If I was judging this, I would start off by scoring this an 83. There's a couple of minor things that would allow me to go higher, but first I want to mention the reasons for taking it to an 83. Has great introductory impact. The creativity is pretty cool, and the fact that the maker decided to create an image that has a nice S-curve, good color palette, and a limited number of different items to draw your attention. As I keep looking at it, what prevents me from going into a higher category, 85 or above? Good choice in putting the log on the bottom right. It would be a better choice if that log was in the right-hand corner, or maybe a quarter step so it's coming in at the bottom of the frame, because where it's placed just off center right now, it's actually working as a barrier, preventing me or making me work to go around the rest of the image to appreciate the direction of the water flow and everything else there. The color of the log, in contrast to all of the green, is also working as an additional barrier to me enjoying this photograph. That's why I would score it the way that I did.
One and do you like the presentation? Now, presentation is one of those kind of things that is always iffy. And if anybody has questions, all these images that were submitted had good presentation. So if you don't know what that means, let me know and we'll talk about it. That's what we're here for. So
in this case, the presentation works. This is what I consider to be a safe and expected PPA type presentation. It's a thin key line that's using a complementary color that was probably pulled from within the photograph. I would actually like to see the maker experiment with this by using maybe a double key line and expanding that second key line by an eighth of an inch out all the way around. And the reason for saying that is it will help this stand apart. If that key line is done subtly, it will show a little bit more in the creativity versus going with what's known and safe. The danger in doing that is adding an element that could potentially pull you out of the image. So make sure that that secondary key line is also very subtle.
right.
Same exact color.
I would actually use the same tone of green and probably pull the opacity back to 70, somewhere between 70 and 50%. That way it actually lightens up and just becomes a secondary item that's there. I don't really want it to be as bright as the main key line. It's also gonna, by lightening it, it'll also add a little bit of a additional three-dimensional effect to the matting.
Yeah. So, and this is why we have a panel of judges, because while I agree with most of what Duane said, there are certain things that I don't, and I absolutely love the log in there. It is one of my favorite elements of the whole image. I absolutely love it. It's to me that is like the hero of this image. I do think though that it's ill placed, and what I mean by that is that you've got a bigger gap on the right than you do on the bottom, and I really like balance. So if you're going to keep the log in there, which I would love to see more space at the bottom, because I don't want to cut the tree off on the right and just have a hanging limb in there. So this is where as the artist you can kind of decide. This is an amazing image, and I and I really love it. So but one of the things that I really felt is I could get mid 80s. I could even get argued up a little bit if there were some other points, but I feel like all the tonality of this image is fairly similar. The river gets my same amount of attention as the log gets my same amount of attention. And one of the things that we want to make sure that we do with these images is that we can be led through the image. And so what I did is I just did some dodging and burning to the image. Let me get in here. And so this is the after, and that's the before. Now, I don't know if that's coming through to you guys.
It is.
But what I did is I just burned down everything but the river a little bit so that it creates more depth. And we're talking like a quarter of a stop just to pull me through into the image. I think something like that could really gain you some points. And Duane, I don't know what you think about the second image. I would love to know your feedback.
I'm liking what's happening in the second image in the upper left. I would actually like to see a bit of the mid-river burnt down a little bit, where the streamlines is making almost that V that's pointing to the right, because it's going to emphasize a little bit more of the S-curve of the river and give it a little bit more of an interesting path.
Yeah. And keep in mind, guys, when you're looking at this too, and even Duane, I know you know this, is that because you're looking at it over zoom, your contrast and your highlight and shadows will be slightly different. So we have to keep that in mind as we're looking at these images. So, all right, cool.
Roy, can I ask one quick question?
Of course.
That was it, Craig.
Okay. The bottom left, you've got that little round highlight bit of the moss or whatever.
Yep.
Would you leave that or would you get rid of it?
Take it out.
I would, that right there, I would take that out.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we're going to get that kind of picky, I would look at little things like this branch coming up above the rock. I would go through here and I would look at little tiny highlights like this. Anything that I look at that my eye would see.
I would remove the twigs on the rocks to the left.
Right. And if we shift it upside down, where does my eye go?
Right to the bright spot where you
Right.
get circled right there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I would do is like this area down here, I'd also burn that down a little bit. Now, to be fair, some of these things may not make a difference at local. They'll definitely probably make a difference at state. And I'm certain they'll make a difference at nationals. So we're kind of. All right, you guys, are we good with this image? Any more questions?
I'll just say thank you. That was my image. Thanks for doing that. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Brad. That's a beautiful image. Yeah, even without our critiques, I still love that image. Like there's so many of these images. I'm like, damn, I wish that was mine. Yeah. Okay, so Duane, let's go ahead and talk about this image right here. You know what? Let me interrupt you real quick. We haven't talked about like categories. So the first image obviously would have been landscape, right? What category would you put this in?
Illustrative.
Yeah,
Photographic artist.
Yeah, illustrative. Yeah, I mean that would probably be good.
This one is a tough one. Whether it's illustrative, could potentially be photojournalism, could be architectural, depending on what the backstory is and what the title is. And Troy, do we have titles by chance?
Nope.
Yes, you do on this one.
Do we?
Yeah, it should be there.
Oh, wait, okay, there it is. Do the time, make the climb. I like that.
So the backstory of it, it's my image. It's penitentiary in Idaho.
So this is a good time to talk a little bit about titles. So depending on where you enter and who the judges are, sometimes the title really doesn't make a difference, meaning that a good judge should not take off points for a title. However, I did not know that this was in a penitentiary. I thought maybe this was like an abandoned lighthouse or something, right? Like I didn't know. So having the right title that isn't complicated for me to understand can help me understand your image, which helps me judge it appropriately, right? So that's a good title. That's a good title, by the way. So,
well, although a judge may dock a couple of points one direction or the other, a title also allows anticipation. Creative titles can set up a judge for great expectation, and if it's confusing or takes a judge in a different direction than what the image is, you could actually lose points for that reason.
Right, right.
I would score this at state or at IPC. I'm going to be right at a 78. There's a lot of really good points about it, but it kind of falls flat on me. And because of the architectural nature of it, I'm about to point out a few things that are holding me back. First of all, I love the trail of light leading up the center of the staircase, but the brightest point of that light is dead center in the frame, and it just leaves me in an awkward place. When I try to enter the photograph, the railing on the right, or sorry, on the left, and actually the entire wall on the left is leaning inward uncomfortably. Knowing the image title in this case kind of explains that, but I'm still left out of balance versus just feeling uncomfortable. So being a penitentiary, I want something that's going to cause me to feel enclosed and trapped. As we are going up the staircase, I basically come to a dead end. I'm a little bit conflicted with the bars and the bright light, and I'm not left with anywhere to go and enjoy the photograph unless I try to jump over the rail, and now my attention's being drawn to the white signs that are on the right-hand side that, since they're unreadable, instead of paying attention to the photograph, I'm trying to figure out what the signs really say. So it's taking me away from what I believe the maker wants me to pay attention to. And lastly, the light socket in the upper right-hand corner is falling right on the key line. So adjust the cropping slightly so that that light outlet is not being intersected right at the touch point of the circle. Either move it further in or take it all the way out. I think the image has great potential to it, and I'd like to see what Troy has to say here.
Yeah, I agree, Duane. So one of the things that we have to consider as artists and makers is that your viewing audience doesn't have the same experience that you have when you're there. So, you may have been walking through this penitentiary and seeing all of this stuff, and you can see it in person, and maybe, the smells and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't come through in the photograph. So you have to really stop and think, like, how can this photograph convey that information, and how can it be more than just a snapshot? And a lot of the suggestions that Duane made are good. We don't want to have interruptions at the edge of the frame, like that guy right there. And also, like, the distance that we have over here on the left should be the same distance that we have over here on the right. Now, I think what you did is you tried to balance the center up here, I'm guessing. But it's better if that's off, and that this down here, the entry point, is balanced. So that would be one of the things that I would certainly do. So what I did is oops, there we go. So this is the before, and this is the after. So what I did was, as I opened up the stairs, you can kind of see it's a little brighter, and it's darker on the outside edges. Now, it's not done very well because I'm working on a JPEG, but the goal is this area in here is darker, and it's brighter on the outside edges, which is not what you want. What you want is you want to have the path leading be a little bit brighter to lead you to the top. So some dodging and burning in there could be really helpful for you. I'll be really honest. I like this image a lot, and I don't think that this is an image that you're going to get a high merit on. With everything we've talked about, with everything tweaked, you're probably going to get, a low 80, 1, 2, something like that. And the reason is it's just there isn't an amazing element in there that's going to make a judge go, oh my God, that's a 90. It's unquantifiable. I don't know how to explain it other than that's just what they'll do. Something else to consider with this image, Scott, would be, like convert it to a tone that conveys the mood better than what it does just in color. Now, this is completely up to you as a creative, what you want to do, how you want to affect your image, whether or not you want to do that. So I'm not saying you have to do that. Ooh, that's weird. But it's something to consider, right? Like, it's your art. You can do all these things to it. You can do all this crazy stuff to it, right? Even converting it to like black and white might help a little bit. So, did you have any questions on that before we go to the next image?
Nope.
Got it. So, for those who haven't entered image competition before, the way that the judges will see the images is, like, for example, our next image is called Reflection of War. So what will happen is this image will come down, and then somebody on our announcer will read the next image. Will say, okay, the next image is in illustrative, and it's Reflections of War, and then the image comes up. So there's that title, and then there's the impact that we're looking for. So let me get my note off of there, and I'll let Duane go ahead and start. Does anybody want to claim this image?
Yeah, that's mine again.
Okay. All right. Great, Scott. I love it, by the way. So, Duane, go ahead.
I would be teetering right at an 80 on this if I was scoring it. I love the concept of the image. I love the initial impact. And this is one where the title does throw me off. I see the reflection, the title Reflections of War. I wish the maker would have gotten even lower into that puddle to show the entire tower instead of cutting it off so close at the bottom of the frame. I think the maker could have waited a few more seconds for the people that are walking towards the bridge to have either gone inside or left the frame. They are a distraction that is pulling me out of the photograph. I'm not sure what category this would be going into. I'm going to assume open or illustrative. And if so, a few minutes earlier, a few minutes later, and the positioning of the sun should have caused those clouds to brighten up with a little bit of oranges or pinks, adding a lot more interest to the sky, where the sky is currently just flat with the marine layer of the incoming storm coming in. And since I'm talking about it as if it's an illustrative category, if you didn't want to wait for the people to leave that are heading towards the bridge or the people that are in between the airplanes, a little bit of Photoshop work and they could have very easily and quickly been removed from the photograph. As well as the tourist safety rails and the trash can that's under the turret dead center on the left-hand side. And in PPA terms, it is pretty much a death sentence to place your horizon in the middle of the frame. So again, by getting lower to the ground, that should have allowed you to bring that horizon line a little bit lower in the frame and adding a bit more impact to the photograph overall.
Duane said all the things. He said all the things I was going to say.
Troy, I'm getting really scared because you and I don't normally agree on that much.
I'm just being nice to you. What the hell?
I knew you were holding something back.
Hang on. I was gonna try to crop this, but now it doesn't want to behave. So what I was gonna say is what Duane is really speaking to is this right here is really where your story lies. And because it gets rid of all those distractions that he's talking about, and there's just enough recognizable, detail in this image that we don't actually need to see, the tower on the decks. Like we don't need to see that. So maybe always, think about maybe leaning into something a little bit more abstract. And I can tell you the judges like that quite a bit more because it's not so traditional. However, to kind of speak to what hang on, let me reset this. To speak to what Duane was saying. Let me reset that crop. There we go. I absolutely agree. So everything is there. The only thing that I really wanted to point out on this image is that you have some fringing going on. I don't know if you were familiar with it, if you noticed it or not, but see this purple line right here? You can get rid of that in Lightroom and in Capture One or any raw editor. It doesn't work on a JPEG. It only works on the raw. Okay, but what you would do is you would go into like your lens tool and you would look for something like purple fringing, and then you can defringe and it will literally look for that purple line and it will get rid of that.
Okay.
Now, I zoomed in on this image on purpose to see that. All right, like your judges are probably never going to be able to see that at this level. However, I just wanted to tell you that because let's imagine that you did some more of these or you did some other images and you printed them big. And you're like, oh my gosh, I just spent all this money printing a large image and now I got these purple lines. I don't know what they are.
Hey, Troy, can you jump back into the reflection? And if you have a color grading tool, grab like the red or maybe the orange and boost the saturation with what's in the cloud.
Yeah. So just make sure that you look for those kind of details before you print, because I've actually done that, which is actually a problem. Come on. There we go. Yeah, I don't know that this is a raw file, so we're not really gonna get a lot, but We might get some punch in the clouds.
There you go.
Something like that. So although Scott, this image, it's in and of itself, cropping it like that may not be ideal because you're losing, you're cropping the mast or whatever that is off on the bottom and stuff like, this image may not be something you can manipulate to that point.
Right.
However, something to think about in the future. So,
Okay.
all right, so let's go to our next image. Let's see. There we go. So I'll start on this one, Duane. How about that? So I really do love this image. Now I'm looking at it, I want to check something. Let's see if that horizon is level. It is not. So, Brad, I'm calling you out because I know it's yours.
Please do that again.
It's pretty close. No, I was messing with you.
Yeah.
No, I was messing with you. But here's the thing. It feels a little bit like it's not level. And what I would say is that sometimes level isn't as important as in what it looks like. So I love everything about this image. The presentation is wonderful. I really don't have a lot to add to that other than, for me, the tones and everything are pretty much the same across the entire image. And I think every image needs a hero. And for you, this image is the center, is that center rock, and that rock face is the hero. And so, if you can't create depth with depth of field, right? Foreground, middle ground, background, because you shot this kind of wide, everything is sharp all the way in the back. What I would suggest you do is a little bit more dodging and burning. And so like this would be my after. And so what I did is I just took down the tones around the outside. But if you notice, I left some of the highlight tones over here up, and I left some of the highlight tones in the water down there, and I really focused on the highlight tones in the rock. So now if you can kind of see when I pop back and forth. Now again, I'm working on a JPEG. So yeah, so I don't have the dynamic latitude, but to me, this feels more like an early morning. Maybe the sun is kind of scraping in from the side, hitting that rock, and maybe spilling on the cliff to the left. And it's a little bit more moodful. To me, this lighting is just kind of flat, kind of the same.
Okay.
Right. Mr. Murphy.
Before I make comments, do me a favor, zoom in on the valley about halfway down on the left-hand side, where the mountain slope is coming into contact with the island.
What, over here?
Up and slightly to the right. Yep, right there.
In there.
Okay. Go ahead and zoom out.
Okay, you only get one request per session, so.
Well, then you better figure out what I'm going to ask before I ask it, so I don't have to ask. So I love the image when it came up, but I was confused by a couple things that are happening. At first, I was thinking that there was some massive defringing going on in the area that I just had Troy zoom into. It is natural. However, in image competition, whether it's natural or not, it caught my attention. It confused me as a judge. And so I'm going to take away points for that because it doesn't make sense. Being there, watching how the water is creating this island and moat is kind of cool, but the choice, one of the side effects of the choice is to get the rocks at the bottom and our anchor point specifically in the lower right, forced us to have to eliminate so much sky that the trees don't really have room to grow or stretch into. So it's creating an uncomfortable feeling. I would actually like to see maybe the bottom 2 inches cropped off of that, because the anchor point in this place is the black rock, which isn't really doing much. I'm talking about the bottom right corner of the frame, Troy.
I know.
And maybe change the anchor point to being the white splash of water that's coming off of the right-hand side of the island. Up, 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 more.
Hey, hey, hey.
You're cropping to my comments.
I don't have to crop at all. Yeah, maybe something like that. Is that what you're talking about?
A little high. There we go. I would actually go right in just to the bottom of the water there.
Yeah, this would be something to play with. But I think what he's saying is that these rocks are intruding in the base of the image, and I don't have a big sense of space, right? But the moment that you crop these rocks out, wherever you decide to crop it, now I feel like it's bigger and it's more open. And
now we have a problem with the horizon line now.
That is correct. That's by looking at that crop when you're photographing it, it would allow you to tilt back on your camera, bringing that horizon line way down into the bottom third.
Yeah, but he's not. We're not there critiquing him, and he gets to reshoot it. We have to critique the image that he has. So don't be that judge.
Fine, then crop way up, please. Down.
The Oregon coast is a bit far away.
Yeah, you can't crop off.
Not quite
no matter
there.
what you do. Yeah, it's gonna be tough. Yeah, I don't think you want to crop any higher than that, but I wonder what if you made the foreground a little bit darker? Maybe something like that. So Brad, so this is the challenge that you have when you're standing there and you're photographing. We have to try to think about these things as we're shooting it, right? Yeah. So if we're shooting it there and you're looking through your camera and you're like, well, that horizon's dead center. No cropping is going to fix that.
Yeah, I had a problem. My problem with this this photograph at the time, because I did think about all that stuff, and that was as close as I can get. I was shooting with the 16 millimeter, 16 to 35, and it wasn't wide enough. So I could have strung some photos together, or changed the aspect, changed it to vertical and did a panorama. But
you didn't.
I didn't.
And that's the thing, like the judges that, in competition, the judges don't care. They shouldn't care. Like they're not going to know.
Right.
I get it. Any final comments on that one, Duane?
That's really about it.
Okay. Did I get your crop where you wanted it?
You were close.
Well, let's get the crop where Duane wants it, so he's happy. Damn it, I can't do this with my. Okay, there we go.
Well, putting it where I want it's going to be a problem because it will put the horizon line in the middle, and then we have to talk about how to stretch the sky.
Stretching the sky is easy. I can do that.
So that fixes your horizon problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And then one thing, Brad, that I did notice is this area back here, which Duane did pick up on, this area back here.
Yeah.
I would try to burn that down a tiny bit. Play with
now that you mentioned it, it bothers me too. So I'll definitely work on that.
Yeah, play with that tone. So, all right, this is our next image. Go ahead, Mr. Murphy. Do we have a title for this? Vintage Michelin.
I would score this a solid 80 in the illustrative category if that's where the maker is going to put it.
I've put it in commercial.
In commercial, I'm going to give it a 77, 76.
Okay. What's the difference between the two classes then? The categories.
So in illustrative, the intent is unknown.
Okay.
It can be used for any number of things. In commercial, the intent is to sell an item, which means that whether something is vintage and being sold or it's new and being sold, it needs to be pristine. So the first thing that I see once I am done reading the Michelin on the tire is the dirt that could have been easily removed from the bottom of the fender, the bottom of the wheel well. Then there's about 20 grains of sand on the tire that could have been easily removed in about 90 seconds. The coloration of the dirt on the edge of the tire and bottom of the tire could have been cleaned if it was going to be a commercial shot. I think I'm looking at the exhaust pipes underneath the fender.
No, just oil cooling pipes.
Okay. Those could have been cleaned for commercial purposes. In reality, if this was part of a car show or some other display in the illustrative category, I wouldn't be as harsh on that. The spot of reflection on that's to the left of the dirt could have been taken out. I'm okay with the reflection in the wheel well at the top. And those are the major comments that I have.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. You know, picking category is so critical because it sets the mindset of the judges. Illustrative is more like artistic, right? Like anything goes. I have to assume, like, if this is an illustrative, that you know, it's a creative shot, and I'm going to be much more forgiving. But very much like what Duane is saying, if this is a commercial shoot, I have to assume the commercial shoot would be for Michelin. And if you were presenting this to Michelin, are they going to be okay with a rusty, you know, center cap? Are they going to be okay with dirt underneath the tire? Are they going to be okay with the, you know, the chips on the paint back here? I don't know, right? Like, it's really going to depend on that, but I'm pretty sure they're going to want their name in focus. So, you know, the M is slightly out of focus and the N is in focus. And those are things that many of these things, whether we agree or not, but this is what the majority of the judges are going to look at, is this is not like a pristine commercial shot. And in illustrative, I can accept the fact that maybe you didn't have any control over this, but in commercial, my assumption is that you have 100% control over your subject, which means you would have freshly armor-alled and cleaned the tires. You would have wiped the bottoms of the tire. I mean, like, all the things would have been handled.
Sure.
And then also you have this massive negative space at the bottom, which if you're going to put copy in it and you're going to make it a commercial image, you can put text in it. I mean, you could actually do it. Or you could leave it like this and you could submit a tear sheet or a sample of what that commercial purpose would be. Along with your image, you could submit that to the image competition team and they'll show that to the judges so the judges can actually see, okay, all that negative space is there on purpose. So it's a category challenge.
Okay. To piggyback on what Troy was saying about commercial, if Michelin was going to use this for a commercial image, what's the message Michelin wants to make with their tires? Are they the best? Are they safe? Are they going to provide a better drive? So if the message is, are they the best? Well, they didn't exactly do a great job of picking the best way to display the tires because of all the dirt that's on the car. If it's safety, again, now what you're telling the consumer is that if you didn't care enough to clean the tires to build a display, then how safe is the tire going to be overall as a daily driver to protect your family?
Well, I can push back a little bit on that. I mean, maybe the intent was they wanted to show the tire in a real world use case, and they're good with that. But regardless of, and Duane's making good points, you have to kind of think, what are the mind of the judges, right? In Duane's mind as a judge, he's seeing it that way. In my mind as a judge, I'm thinking, this is not a commercial shoot that you prepped for, that somebody paid you $2,500 a day to photograph this tire, right? And so that aside, a couple image things for me is this little corner back here is a trap. You could burn that down. So that's going to be very distracting, regardless of everything else that we've already said. And then also the foreground is brighter than it needs to be. So what I did is I just burned it down just a bit. I put a linear gradient in there. And I think that helps draw your attention vertically. So even if you're going to put text in there, something like that might be helpful to consider, right? Because it's all about that tonal depth in your image. So we build depth in our images through, lens compression and depth of field and light and tone that goes to the image. So that's what I would do. Does anybody have any questions on this image? Craig, did you have any more questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
And you can argue with Duane if you want. You can, not me, but you can argue with Duane.
There's no need to argue with Troy. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right. I didn't win commercial photographer of the year at PPC at all. Okay. Let's move over here. This is called Little Bear. Oops, you can see all my notes. I'll take my notes off.
So, are you trying to say something, Troy?
Oh my, so that kind of blows it. I'll go first. Oh my God. Sorry about that. Okay. So initially, when this image came up, I love it. It's beautiful, well presented. I like the matting, the way that it's done. So for those that aren't familiar, this extra space we have on the left and the top is essentially giving the impression that there is more space on that side, which is the direction that the puppy is looking. And so that's a very nice presentation. The tones are nice. The key line is a little hot for me. When I'm looking at the dog in the middle, I'm seeing the key line. And what I really prefer is that the key line is something I have to look at to see. Just shows me where the edge of the image is. But what I really noticed in this image, and I don't have to zoom in to see it, but I can see all the cloning that's been going on over here. So like there's these little hair tufts that are popping out. And the other thing that kind of popped out to me right away is anytime that you do a lot of Photoshop work, it messes up the grain and the noise in the image. So if you guys can see up here, there's a lot of grain, right? We'll call it noise or grain, which is the noise from the sensor. But when you do a lot of cloning, notice how it's gone. It's soft. It's completely smooth. And that's telltale signs of lots of Photoshop work. And so the same thing is happening over here in this area, over here in this area, which is why I circled everything. So I knew. So I remember, and then there's some cloning tracks happening up here. And you can see there's no noise at all in that region. And that's going to be a huge giveaway to the judges, to some judges, not all the judges, but I'm very Photoshop picky, but these tufts of hair right here are huge. And that'll definitely get picked up probably at state and definitely at nationals if it goes very far. That said, beautiful image. Just got to fix the Photoshop stuff. Duane.
The client, whoever this was done for, is going to love this. Compositionally, there's two things, maybe three, that could have easily been adjusted. So the knot in the corner of the wood could have very easily been cloned out right underneath the puppy's paw.
That knot? I like that knot.
I like it too.
Why don't you like that knot?
Because the portrait is about, I'm sorry, what's the name of it? Bear?
Yeah, hang on. I'm trying to clean up my
The portrait is about the puppy, and the knot is causing me to look at the woodwork and not the puppy.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about this little?
I'm sorry, I'm not speaking fast enough, Troy. So the branch that Troy just circled needs to be taken out, or could have been pushed down, flattened, or broken off if it's your garden, or at least easily pushed out of frame. And the maker could have taken a step about 2 inches to our right, which would have separated the dog from the plants on the left.
Yep. Yeah, and these are things that the judges will talk about as if you can reshoot it at that moment for them. And to be fair, these are the things that are holding the judges back. I would absolutely agree. Like I would probably, initially seeing this, not seeing any of the Photoshop-y stuff, I would probably be in the mid to lower 80s, maybe 82, 83, because it's beautifully done. I mean, it's a beautiful portrait. But in order to get it above that, right, that there seems to be this scoring barrier right about 85, that to go above that, it needs to get exceptional, right? It needs to get superior. It needs to get better. So, so your big things, Duane, is this guy right here, the knot, and like these little branches down here that are intersecting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the puppy looking away. If this is going to be a hero shot to the owners, then the puppy really should be looking at camera. If this is going to be a secondary portrait, if you're doing a collection and this is meant to go off to one side or the other, then looking away, he's absolutely lovely and adorable. I'm totally good with that. If you are to get this to a point of scoring above 85, that bright green branch in the left-hand cluster of bushes on part of the dog's nose to the left also needs to be toned down.
Right. Now for me, I don't know if you agree to this. I know you do a lot of pet portraits, but for me, I think that the crop is a little bit too loose. And so I was looking at, because right now it's dead center, right? See the crop, so the subject is dead center. I'm thinking that something like that, that's actually too, maybe something like that. What do you think?
That is getting closer. So in the realm of animal photography, puppy photography, think about how you see your pets every day. In this particular photograph, how is this any different than how you normally see your dog? So Troy, crop in literally to the dog's backside where the one green branch is coming in contact with them. So the bottom left, yep, okay, more, good. Bring it down from the top. Bring the bottom up, just below his paw. And even right there is a starting point.
Yeah, this feels too tight for me. I wouldn't like that. I would want more space.
I would prefer the space to be on the left, but yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things to be really critical of, you can obviously see it, and one of the reasons that Duane and I are having this little banter is I want you to understand is that in the minds of the judges, these are the things that they're thinking about, and this is the struggle, right? But one of the things that's happening in this image, and I'm certain that Duane would agree, is here your puppy's dead center. We're not using our rule of thirds at all, not our horizontal lines, not our vertical lines, not our intersecting lines. Somehow, wherever we would, Duane and I might not agree on how to crop it, but we do agree that it needs cropped. And like in this instance, getting that the eyes on the horizontal third can be really helpful. That is a much more powerful and impactful crop. So crop can have a lot to do with this. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And now with this cropping, if you come in a little closer or leave it where it is and clone out the bush that's on the right, you're down to 2 subjects. Because of the focus, because of the color, and because of the size, Okay, so let me start from left to right. Because of the size of the bush on the green, on the left, that's actually larger than the puppy. So that's the dominant object. Then you move to the puppy, dominant object number 2. Now you have the difference in color of that bush that's on the right. That's object number 3, all competing for your attention. By getting rid of the bush on the right, toning it way down, now you're focused more on the dog here.
Yep. Yep. And as much as we've talked about it, it's still a wonderful portrait. It's still really beautiful. It just needs that little tweak to get those higher scores. So, all right, we do have more images, Duane. So we gotta move it along. So let's look at this one. Go ahead. I'm gonna let you start. Any questions, you guys? Just jump in, interrupt us.
I would score this an 82. It's a solid portrait. I leaned in, wanted to take a closer look because I'm not yet convinced that the eye on the left is actually in focus. The hair that's coming into the eye could easily be cloned out. I would actually like to see, this is one that I would actually like to see cropped very tightly. Everything that's around our dog is creating separation, but it's so bright that it's actually competing for attention and not allowing me to look at our puppy. Yeah. And I do like that more.
See, now this is where in a competition, what would happen is his score would be an 82 and my score would probably be like an 89. And I would challenge because I absolutely love this shot. The only thing that I would change is a little bit of the highlights above the head. I would burn that down. But I could even go higher. I think this is fantastic. It's simple. We have good composition, good direction of light. We have the attention of our subject. The light on our subject is beautiful. We got this nice rim light. The face is lit. I can see into the eyes. There's so many positive things about this image. I would want to argue that this deserves a higher score. And this is why we have 3 judges. You know, somebody else may see something that I don't see, or I see something they don't see. But, you know, I think this is a wonderful portrait, and I would score it very high.
My counter arguments to that would end up being I'm a little confused about what's going on by camera right dog's ear, camera right dog's body. Because as you pointed out, yeah, we do have great direction of light, but I don't understand the white line that almost looks like, I just lost the word, separation. So when you're looking at the dog's shoulder, I don't understand what's going on with the white line there because I don't believe that that's the highlight coming off of the back of the dog since our direction of light is coming from camera left. It looks more like cloning to me around the dog's ear.
No,
because there are parts of that
cloning. Yeah, no, there's no cloning. Yeah. I mean, these are the things that the judges are going to look at. So,
and then the plant that is camera left, the light green could easily be cloned out, so it's no longer grabbing for attention.
Yeah, some of these little details in here could be pushed down. Some of the bokeh that's back here, the highlight right behind the dog's head could be pushed down a little bit. And there's some little artifacting going on right here. It's probably like, you know, some kind of post-production thing. It's very nice. It's very nice. I don't have a lot to critique on this image that I would change. What do you think about the key line? I think the key line should come down a little bit. It's a little hot.
It's, yeah, the key line is definitely way hot on that because it's the brightest thing in the photograph.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. All right, let's go. This is called Feather River Canyon. So which one is which? Okay. So this is the before, and I'll just jump in on this one, Duane. These are one of the most challenging images for judges to critique And it's one of the hardest ones for, I think, for people to submit, because I wasn't there, so I don't have the same sense of awe that you might have when you photograph that. And I think that in an image like this, I think that gets lost. Right away, to me, the tonal values across the entire image are the same. So I don't have light leading me through the image. Yes, I have the leading lines of the river. That's really wonderful. But really, if we flip this upside down, the clouds and the sky are what draw our attention. And I don't really think that's what this image is all about. So what I did do is I did a little bit of dodging and burning. And again, it's hard to do on a JPEG. But what I tried to do is I tried to bring the clouds down, tried to bring the rocks in the surrounding area down, and then I tried to lighten the river so that the furthest point of the river was the brightest, right? So this area right here was brightest, and it drew my attention through here, okay? And so I did that by bringing this area up and bringing all of these areas around here down, even the clouds and stuff. And again, I can't do it very well because of the JPEG, the tones aren't there. But you can kind of get a rough sense of what I'm speaking to. This to me adds dimension and volume to the image. It makes me feel like I'm standing at the top of a gigantic canyon that I'm now can experience. This to me is kind of tonally flat, and it's hard for me to experience that. So I'm lower in my score, maybe 80, 78, 79, hoping that another judge would see something I don't see. But what do you think, Duane?
I'm not going to be that judge. I'm going to be at the entry level category, at the entry level competition. I would be just at 80 on this. So Troy made some very good points. As a judge, something that you're going to, or sorry, as a participant, something you're going to hear on a common regular basis is the judges want to roam. And this has a great leading line bringing you through the image and then trapping you. So we start at the bottom center. The judges have this thing about anything to do with center. And we go through the river and we get to the end of the canyon and there's just nowhere to go. We don't levitate out of the canyon, so we can't really jump into the clouds and come back. If we start at the clouds, now we have a barrier to get into the river. Because of a lack of shadows, I'm questioning the time of day that this was photographed. And because of what's happening in the river, it appears even more to be mid-afternoon, because we don't have any of the cool streaming movement in the water. And it leads me to my final point that most photographs need to have a central subject. As judges, we're just not smart enough to figure that out at times. And as I look at this, I don't know what the viewer wants me to look at. Is it the end of the canyon? Is it the clouds? Is it the possible climb down with that white stream of rocks that are on the left-hand side? And so I just don't see where I'm supposed to go. And as a whole, the image in itself does not appear to be a single stopping point to look at. It's a great landscape. If I was on the hike that day, I would have loved being there. But as a photograph, there's nothing to hold my attention, or in what the 12 elements would consider to be impact, for more than a moment.
Right. And to be fair to the maker, the judges aren't there. So we don't get a sense, they won't get a sense of the same thing that you got a sense of while you were there. And that's really, really hard sometimes to convey, is the vastness or the sound or, whatever. So we have to think photographically, what could I have done in this moment to make this different than what anybody else would have done while they're there? And so if you're ever in this place again, consider, okay, how is this going to look flat, right? Maybe if you had done a long exposure and allowed the clouds to wisp and allowed the river to wisp, then you would have a much more impactful image. But right now it's just a bit static. So
something the maker may want to consider, and I don't know if they have it or if they will have an opportunity to ever go back, is I look through the image. One thing that keeps catching my attention, and I would actually love to see a version of this a lot closer up, is the lines in the rock in the top left center. That could actually be a photograph on its own. There's something cool going on with the rock, and whatever those lines or dividends that were etched into that rock could be a unique photo on it by itself.
Yep. Very cool. Any questions on that one before we go ahead?
No, but it's mine, and I just wanted to tell you, I was thinking all the things that you said, and the only thing I did to this was just a global dehaze, because I wanted to hear if you were thinking the same thing I was and you were. So thanks.
Yeah, you know, and there's a lot. We all have images in our catalog that it was amazing, and we hiked for 2 hours to get there. The view is spectacular, and we frame it and we shoot it, and then we get back and we look at it later, and we have to remove our emotion from that moment and realize it just doesn't communicate it the way that I hoped it would communicate.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Well, you just confirmed what I thought, so that's why I threw it in there without really any edits. So.
No, that's great. No, it's great. Perfect image. All right, we have one more. Okay. Oops. I'll jump in on this one. So right away, I love this image, but here's what I suggest every time. Look at what your eye is drawn to. And if the triangular shapes of the ice are what you want your subject to look at, this is not working. Okay. It's definitely not. So what I did was I did a little dodging and burning. I brought the background down. I brought the little mini iceberg forward. And so if we experiment with that again, it's not as perfect, but it's better than this image. Like right away, that little that triangular iceberg to me pops out. Okay.
Yep.
So it's really up to you what you want your subject matter to be, but that's dang, I keep going to that one. Okay. There we go. So think through the image. So the way that it's presented here, I might be at an 80, probably not, because we have like a helicopter or something over there. And so right away, I almost will, personally for me, if I see Photoshop work or I see dust spots or anything like that, I almost won't merit it, because I see that as a basic function that I would want to clean up. So I would get rid of that and do some dodging and burning and some tweaking to bring out some attention in that rock, into that ice. And in the raw, you've got to have some amazing detail in that ice. There's got to be just some luminance that's in there that you could probably pull out. So
that's what my struggle was, is trying to figure out how to make it luminous. I didn't edit this one either. Again, I just did a quick dehaze globally, and that was it. I saw the bird or whatever that is, not a helicopter, but I saw that over there, and I figured I'll fix it later. But my thought was, is how do I make those two triangular slabs of ice glow? Because they were glowing when I was there.
So I would actually crop in on this even more.
Really?
Do not change the verticals. Crop the top and the bottom in closer. The sky has no reason to be there.
Okay.
Make this more of a panorama.
Okay.
I would clone out the ice that is in the water to the right.
Oh, really?
It's not triangular. All it's doing is competing for attention that doesn't need to be there.
Okay. I was trying to make sure that I had
Nope.
some space so that it didn't just look like, because the thing was massive.
Yeah, the challenge that you have with this is I don't like this at all. I don't like this crop at all.
I like the
Nope.
background triangle. So the hill in the background that's also triangular.
So Troy, crop back out to the original sides, please. Bring the bottom up and the top down a little more. As you're playing with your luminance, make that front iceberg glow. That becomes your foreground. Your middle ground, you can bring up the triangle on the right a little bit more and then actually darken the snow in the background to add separation between the three.
Okay.
Yeah, this is going to be really tough. Annette, and the reason is that you've got to be really careful about how much you process the color and how much you process the luminosity and stuff within these images, because it'll look fake very quickly. Whether you're in Photoshop or you're doing it in Lightroom or even in Capture One, you can do some selections of those triangles, and I think make sure that you keep the triangles layered in tones, right? And you want to adjust like the shadows and the dark end of the scale of your levels, because that'll increase color saturation as well. Bring up your highlights to create some more separation in there. This one it's just gonna take more time for you, because you probably are gonna have to learn some Photoshop or Lightroom skills that you haven't really mastered yet to kind of bring that out. And this is one of those kind of images that you're going to learn on.
Okay.
And I do agree with Duane that maybe taking this little floaty bits out down here in the lower right would be really nice. However, that is not easy, because you have this natural high frequency of the water, okay, and a standard cloning brush or any type of like content aware fill is going to completely ruin it, and you're going to get really weird chunky wave artifacts and stuff in there. Photoshop does a really poor job with that.
Yeah.
And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to have to figure out how to do that. And when I say figure out how to do that, I mean to make it look natural is going to be really tough. So if you have any other images from the shoot that where that ice is moved, or you have another section of the water that you can bring in, there's all those different techniques for that. We can't go over that stuff now.
Yeah. No, I
But be very careful with water, because it'll scream that you've edited it. So be really careful with that.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
And maybe some advanced Photoshop conversations would be good for us in the future. But this image is certainly epic, and I think you have a lot of opportunity with that.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm jealous. I want to be there.
Yeah.
I want to go back so bad. Part of our problem was we had an itinerary and a timeline where we couldn't be where we wanted to be at the right time of day. So like the Icelandic word for that canyon, Floor, whatever canyon means, Feather River. That's why I named it that. But we were there in the middle of the day, and the clouds had just broken. It was very cloudy. So yeah, so the tonality was extremely flat, and we had no choice.
So something that anytime that you're in a situation where you can't ever go back, right? Like once in a lifetime type situations. Depending on the gear that you're shooting with, and I'm going to poke fun at Stanley a little bit because he's shooting Micro Four Thirds, and this doesn't necessarily work as well for him. But
yeah, but it's not anybody who shoots Micro Four Thirds. It's only Stanley.
It's only Stanley. Yeah, it's only him. But shoot more, shoot plates, right? Shoot more, shoot wide, and then figure on having to crop later to get that perfect composition, because it's nearly impossible for you to add, as opposed to cropping it off, right? And I'm saying this is within reason, not don't shoot like super wide and think you're going to crop in and make it look like a 200 millimeter. But give yourself more space, because sometimes there's an asset outside of that frame that you're going to crop that you might want to bring in some water,
Right.
or wait until something has moved past, like try to notice that, right? And be like, okay, I'm going to shoot a little wider because I don't know what the ideal crop is for this later. And then you can tweak it later.
In this particular case, I was on a moving boat, so I couldn't change lenses, and we were passing by, so it was.
So in
totally get it,
competition, what the judges would say to that is, still an 80.
TOS.
Oh, I know. Oh, I understand, but I know what Troy's saying about shoot it differently, shoot it wider, and I often do that. Just couldn't hear, so.
Yeah, when we were traveling Japan this last time around, there were several places I knew I was never going to get back to. So I purposely shot everything with a 5-frame auto bracket turned on.
Yeah.
But this is a wonderful image, Net, and I think that if you spend some time, you'll get this to the vision that you wanted to get to. And to give you some encouragement, Ansel Adams, the Moonrise over Hernandez, he edited that image over like 4 decades to get it to the image that he actually saw in his mind's eye at the time that he photographed it. So you have time. You have plenty of time to play with it. Okay, let's go to our final. This is our final image. Ooh, look, and you saw my notes again. Damn. All right, I guess I'll have to start because you can see my notes. Hang on, let me bring this up. Here we go. Okay. So right away, and I don't know, did we get a title on this one? Cottontail. Oh, that's cute. Right away, I love this image. And I think the judges are going to be impressed with this image because, one, it's very unique, and unique always does pretty well. So,
No, it doesn't.
Well, if you have good judges, I said pretty well. Unique does pretty well, but when it's so far out of the norm, then it becomes, more of a challenge. I personally love this image. I think it's fantastically well done. I would probably take a little space off the left-hand side. I think we have too much of this left wall. I don't really think that we need that. So I think you could probably crop this wall, and I'll do it in a minute, but you could probably crop it like right in there.
Okay.
If you wanted to.
I was just trying to keep that line finishing up into a corner. Was part of that reason for that crop as well.
Yeah, that's gonna.
Without losing too much of the reflection on top.
Right.
Or is it stronger with regardless of that?
Well, so I'm looking at your rule of thirds, right? So like her left foot, it's on that line. Like her hips and her waist are at that top left intersection, pretty much. So to me, her right foot is right there at that top right intersection. To me, that's a stronger crop.
Okay.
Even though what you said was that that line doesn't end in the corner, which I think is okay. I don't think it needs to end in the corner.
Probably just clean that out there as well then.
So Troy, go back. Pre-crop. I agree with what you're saying on the crop, but I want to point something else out that is making the image stronger by cropping it. On the original version of this, Craig, there's something in the wall that is competing for attention that has been removed with this crop. So those dark spots that are halfway down, down.
That's just the pebble crete in the pool.
That's nice, but as a judge, we don't care.
No, fair enough.
It's all yours, Troy.
Yep.
So Duane is absolutely right. And something to be considerate of here is that the more that you remove and the simpler that you make your image, and the further you try to get your image above 85s, 87s into 90s, the more nitpicky that judges are going to be. Okay. Even to the point, like, over here in this section, there's a little shadowy divot in the wall. You gotta get rid of that. You gotta fix these pebbles. You gotta fix these pebbles up here. Like, it has to be perfect.
Okay.
And this is where I kind of lean into this a little bit, is that at this viewing distance, we really can't see it. However, it doesn't take much for me to zoom in and realize like there is a distortion happening here. Now, I don't know if you did like free transform or something, but notice the grain in the image on the back wall is all pretty much consistent, but right in this area right here, it's not.
Okay.
And so that area, see, it's selected right there.
Yep.
So that makes me think, whether you did or not, it makes me think that you did some free transform in there and you mucked up the pixels. But what's even bigger than that to me is that you see this really dark black line all the way around her body. Okay. I know that's not natural. I know that only shows up when you do like clarity or dehaze or things like that, or you over sharpen. That pops up. And
Okay.
for me, I don't like to see that because to me that's too much Photoshop. It's pushed too hard, and I'm not a fan of that. Now, that may not bother Duane, that may not bother other judges, but you're looking for those extra 1 or 2 points. The only final thing that I would say is I would remove this reflection.
Okay.
That's happening up there, because I don't really know what it is, so I took it out.
Okay.
Right, and it doesn't need to be there, but it looks weird with it there. Oops, I went too far.
Cool.
Duane?
So one thing that keeps drawing my attention because I just don't understand it is on her waist. I don't understand the light pattern. Troy, turn your markings back on and I'll try to guide you to it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so I mean, it looks like there's a bikini line that was either cloned out or just doesn't make a lot of sense to me why it's falling like that.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
It'll just be a little bit of a tan line.
The other thing that bothers me, and it's ridiculously minute, but enough to grab my attention, is just below her bum. There's a separation in her legs, but I have to work to figure that out. It just doesn't look natural, and it's causing my brain to short circuit.
Yep.
I'll have a look at that.
Yeah, I believe that is her right leg.
Yeah, that'd be her other leg.
Yeah, there's not enough of it to make it clear, and when a judge doesn't have time to think about it, and there's too much to not really to be able to clearly ignore it.
Right. I would say, Craig, you're getting into the level where you need to be so picky and fix so many things that you would normally not think to fix. For example, I always fix ankle bones. I always fix these little highlights and these little weird shadows on your feet. I don't get rid of them entirely, but I remove the attention to them. So
the ankle lines can also be lightened up.
Yeah, right in here, that right there.
That line, but also the horizontal.
Yeah, yep. So anything that's going to draw your attention away, you've got to be a little more critical of. Like kneecaps, for the most part, kneecaps are not pretty. They're weird. And you get weird shadows. Elbows do the same thing. But the judges, whether they consciously have time to talk about it or not, or they consciously can figure out what it is, subconsciously, that may be something that bothers them, right? Like that little piece right there, or like this weird light, right? Which I'm assuming that's a tan line from like a thong bikini or something. Yeah. And so those are things that would behoove you to fix. Also, like look at the light on her back foot compared to the light like on her backside there. They're competing.
Okay.
So really it's just that balance of light. Now the bubbles back here, I don't know what Duane would say, but I would take these out. I would take all these little tiny bubbles out.
I'd remove them, and I get the shadow in front of her. What I find odd is she's probably in reality somewhere between 5 and 5'4".
She's tiny.
However, where her shadow is on the top makes sense. But the gradation of the pool goes from blue to brown all the way down with that same shadow line, and I can't figure out why that's happening. I would expect her shadow to likely fall off at about the same level as where her knee is, and why the entire pool is now changing color doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that doesn't bother me, but it visually, it could be something that just is off-putting for the judges always, right? And that's kind of like what we said in the beginning, is that we're talking about such a niche type scenario where the littlest things, even things that you don't really quantify, can really bother the judges. Now, I think this is an amazing image. The way that it sits right now, if I was to be presented with this, with the minor edits and maybe with a crop, I would be at 85, 86, somewhere in there, because I think that the creativity is really high, but I would be held back by other little things like the attention to detail, the removing of these bubbles, because I think the bubbles do away with the sort of fantasy scenario of like the mirror and the dual universe or whatever my brain goes to.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike some of the shots that you've done where you leave the leaves in there,
Yep.
which in that case I'd be like, well, you leave the bubbles and stuff, right? So we're getting kind of into the
Okay.
personal preference. And let's be honest, for a lot of these images, it's going to really come down to either the technicals of the image, the personal preferences of the judge, and sometimes the judges will look at an image that they have no ability to create themselves, and then they just fall apart mentally. They don't know how to process it, so they're either overly generous, or generally they're overly conservative because
Yeah.
they're afraid to judge.
Cool.
So did you guys have any questions on the images before I turn off the screen share, in case we want to go back and reference anything that we see in here? No? Good.
Got one more about my ice picture. So if I bring up that front triangle, is it going to cause it to be way too crunchy? Because like your edit looks a lot crunchier. Too much noise, or is that gonna work?
I would say, and you have to. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to influence your creative vision. Okay. And to just be completely fair, if I say too much, then I don't want you to go build an image based on my overly commenting on how I would suggest you do it. I think it's best for you to figure it out. But what's a good thing to do is to create some separation in there. And one of the ways that you can create that separation, I personally like things edgy and crunchy. That's me. That's entirely me. But the way that you could do that is if you're in Lightroom or whatever tool that you're using, is to simply bring up the highlights and the midtones in that particular area.
Right.
Okay. So like if I select that area and I just bring up like the whites, okay, and the highlights.
Okay.
And I'll bring that down so I can do like the whole thing, because there's a lot of white in that front one, right?
Yes.
And then I can also maybe bring the shadows down just a tad. Now what you can see is I've created some contrast in that.
Right.
That gives it more of a luminance look.
Yeah. And that's
now when
what
you're
I wanted to achieve anyway, because that's what I saw when I was there, because that thing was just glowing.
Yeah. So when you're editing an image, it's really important. I mean, I styles and presets and all that stuff are great for inspiration, but it's really important, I think, that when you look at an image, you have to ask yourself, what is it that I want to fix about this image? And like when I look at the triangle, what I see is I see that the midtones are fine. Some of the shadows are pretty okay, but it's the highlights that are flat for me.
Right.
So the first thing that I'll do is I want to target that region. I want to target the highlights, right? So as I start to, I grabbed the box. So as I start to bring up those whites, I'm like, ooh, look at the triangle. The triangle pops really good. So that means I need to go in and do a local adjustment with just the highlights.
Okay.
what a lot of guys will do, Peter is, I'm going to pick on Peter a little bit. Peter just goes through and just like starts sliding things.
I do that though too.
Yeah, which is okay. But now notice, like with the contrast, the triangle looks really good, but the water, all the shadows are blocked up in the water. So I think the water is better with a little bit of contrast. The triangle's better with a lot more contrast, but the background is better with almost no contrast.
Right, exactly.
And by the way, I can just see somebody out there being like, well, I'm a purist. Like, I don't edit my images. Like, there's not an image that you've ever loved that isn't edited. I mean, from photojournalism down through the ages, dude, they're dodging and burning. They're all edited. So whatever suits your style. I don't want to.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. I just didn't want to get dinged for too much noise.
You're gonna get more noise if you pull up shadows, but you don't have a lot of shadows in there to really get noise in there. Okay. Plus, everything that you have is got kind of a wonderful texture to it anyway, because it's the snow and the ice and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't worry about the noise.
Okay.
But edit the image until you're happy with it. Put it as a background on your computer, and then one day you're going to look at it and you're going to go, "Oh, that's total garbage. I don't know what I was thinking." Or you're going to be like,
so
"Oh my God, that's the best image I've." Is that my image? Because it changes over time, right? Sometimes you need to bake on them. So a lot of my images are images that I've shot like a year ago, because it takes a little while for me to love them and get them edited to where I want. So,
all right.
So we're coming up on 8 o'clock, which is just about 2 hours, which is right about where I figured we'd end up. So, questions? Anybody have questions? No? Okay. Very quiet crowd. Always quiet. Thanks everybody for being here with us. I'm gonna stop the recording. If you have any questions, you want to know more about what we're doing, just go to IEPPV.com.